microphony.
And a phony at the mic.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The Doctor of Discernment is now online.
You know, much like my show, in that it's a local reaction to things that are happening on a federal level.
Dispensing a daily dose of common sense. No prescription required.
Wow, do I have a boatload of stuff for you, from the crazy to the absurd. Let's start getting into it because, I mean, it is bizarro world out there. And I say, if it's obvious to me, it should be obvious to everybody. Oh, wow. Who could have seen this coming?
This is the Fourth Hour with Greg Belfrage.
Hold on to your butts.
Broadcasting from my basement bunker beneath KELO Radio. Welcome to the Fourth Hour of the Greg Belfrage Show. It's great to have you along. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate all of you so much. Let's go see what is going on. You've got the hearing going on for Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. He is the choice then to lead, the president's choice to lead the Department of Homeland Security. And so the chairman of the committee, Rand Paul, not a surprise here. I talked about this at length this morning as to why Rand Paul voting against Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. So he voted against. So then what's going to happen? Do you wind up getting the votes? And who might be the Democrat who comes through? You know who it is. Democratic Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania. Fetterman voted for Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. So it looked there for a moment as to, they were looking for enough votes to be able to get the nomination out of committee. That's the first obstacle. You've got to get the nomination out of committee and then you can advance it. So that was done. Thanks to Senator John Fetterman. Now, while we're talking about Senator Fetterman, he is the only Democrat who has got any kind of sense about him, honestly. I mean, I listen to the other Democrats, and really what it is an exercise in patience, because I want to see how long I could go before I flip my wig. And Senator John Fetterman was on a podcast, the All In podcast, and he was asked about his own party. So during this interview, Fetterman was asked, he said, who do you think leads the Democratic Party today? And Fetterman said, oh, we don't. We don't have one. He said, I think the TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome, the TDS, I think that's the leader right now. Trump Derangement Syndrome is what's leading the Democrat Party. He's right. I mean, this is a Democrat. That's his assessment of who is leading the Democrat Party. Senator Fetterman, I wish you were leading the Democrat Party. Seriously. This is somebody, and I know that he and I disagree on a host of things. I hear him speak about some things, and I'm like, but more times than not, the guy has got both his feet on the ground. He is not living in bizarro world. And it's one of the reasons why you hear not only me, I think other conservative talkers like Clay and Buck, who are like, what's with Senator John Fetterman? He's, this is making sense. I get it. I understand where he's coming from. And then he went on to talk about what's going on in the Democratic Party. He said, right now our party is governed by the TDS, he said. And that has made it virtually impossible without being punished as a Democrat to agree something's good or I agree with the other side. So I wonder what heat Fetterman is taking for what he says and his votes, because I have wondered, Democrats have got to try to primary Fetterman. They will, because Fetterman is the only breath of common sense that's coming out of the Democrat Party. Now, I think it would be a mistake, but Democrats, that's almost then a guarantee that, if it's a mistake, the Democrats are all in, right? So it's just incredible. He said he was talking about Operation Epic Fury. And he said, I am literally the only Democrat in Congress that I've come across that is saying, I think it's a great thing to break and destroy the Iranian regime. I think it's entirely appropriate to hold them accountable. In fact, he sounds at times, he sounds a little bit more like a war hawk, on that. He's been very clear that he understands what's going on with Iran. And he said what frustrates him most is the disconnect between longstanding Democratic rhetoric and current reactions. He said, what's strange to me is that every single Democrat that's run for president and anyone I know in Congress says we must never allow them to acquire a nuclear bomb. When that happens, why not celebrate that or acknowledge that? Exactly. And that's why I think you've got Fetterman saying it's Trump derangement syndrome that is running the Democratic Party right now. Because why wouldn't they say that? It's a no-brainer. So many of these things are. I understand we're going to disagree, and I understand they don't like Trump, but, there's not liking somebody, and then there is just being nuts. And Fetterman is the lone Democrat that I can think of right off the top of my head in Congress who's not nuts. There are a few others, but he by far is. So he said, I've only witnessed just criticism and these kinds of things. He's getting attacks, he said. So, yeah, you don't have to agree on every single thing, but when a good thing happens, just because it comes from, the different party, that tells me that you're choosing the demand of the base or the party over country or what really, I think is appropriate in that circumstance. So understand what he's saying there. The Democrats are choosing the base over the country, putting party over country. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that for a long time. It's party is the party first, and you have got to wonder if you were a fly on the wall, what you would be hearing the Democrats saying about Democratic Senator John Fetterman, right? So I give the man credit. And then this piece, this is at PJ Media. It's a piece at PJ Media. Who wrote this? Matt Margolis. And Margolis says, while Fetterman's assessment of his own party is not exactly news to us, when a Democrat is admitting what we've been saying for years, it's a big deal. Yeah, and I think it is too. This is one of the reasons why I highlight Senator Fetterman so much, because here you've got somebody within the Democratic Party who sees what's going on and who's speaking about it. Not only does he see it, he is commenting on it. And I don't know that you could ever shame other Democrats into, I do sound like a nut. Do you wonder if anybody in Washington asks themselves that question? Wait a minute. Now, if I take that position, am I going to sound like a nut? Because I ask myself that question at times, and then sometimes the answer is, I don't care if I sound like a nut. This is something I believe. I believe this wholeheartedly. I think Democrat, what do they stand for? What do they stand for? Other than, tearing down the country. You thought I might not talk about the Save America Act, and I won't for long. There are also, this is a piece of Town Hall by Amy Curtis. Excuse me. Amy Curtis has got a piece of Town Hall. Quite an admission from CNN about the Save America Act, which passed an important procedural hurdle, 51-48 this week. And I told you about this earlier this week. Again, the votes being there enough to get the issue onto the floor for debate. So the votes were there. That's a far cry from having the votes there to pass it, because you have people that will vote to debate something and then they wind up voting against it. So don't read too much into that. But Amy Curtis goes on to say Democrats have falsely claimed for a while that people, especially women and minorities, won't be able to get an ID to prove their citizenship. Just too hard to get a birth certificate or a marriage license. You've been married and all of that stuff. And then she says, but that lie is falling apart. Even CNN is admitting there are a number of different ways to show citizenship. So Jake Tapper said, here's what the bill actually says would be acceptable proof of citizenship for voting under this law: a real ID card, a valid U.S. passport, an official U.S. military ID card, along with a record of service showing a U.S. birthplace, a government-issued photo ID showing a U.S. birthplace, paired with a birth certificate, an adoption decree, report of birth abroad, naturalization certificate, or American Indian card. So, again, most of those, do you have that stuff? I bet. Do you have, I mean, you won't have all of them, but do you have enough? I bet you do. I mean, I look at this. Okay, I've got the real ID card. I've got my birth certificate. I know right where it's at home. Very easy access to that. All of these things. So Tapper says, I understand this bill includes a lot more than just the documentation, but a lot of Americans might hear that list and think that's a lot of options and wonder, do Democrats have an issue with voter ID in general or just this specific voter ID bill? Okay, he had me right up until when he says, because he's spot on. And Jake Tapper's not spot on all that often. So when he is, you got to give him credit, right? So Jake Tapper says, a lot of Americans might hear that list and think that's a lot of options. Yes, it is a lot of options, right? We're trying to make accommodation for everybody. What are your circumstances? Were you somebody who was born abroad? Were you adopted? Whatever. Are you married? We want to take all of those people into account because they're American citizens. We want to make sure that they're able to vote. And then he says, I wonder, do Democrats have an issue with voter ID in general or just this specific voter ID bill? They have an issue with voter ID in general. That's the answer. And Jake Tapper should know that. I mean, he's talked to enough Democrats. He talks to enough people. He should know they have an issue with voter ID in general. That's the issue. And again, I just find that absolutely laughable when you have the mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, who is saying that, oh, yeah, when they had the big snowstorm in New York City recently, they were, people going out to shovel snow and saying, yeah, make sure you've got, two. If you're going to be out there shoveling snow, we need 2 forms of ID for you to participate in that program, helping others clear their sidewalks. 2 forms of ID. But when you go to vote, yeah, nada. You don't need any. The whole thing is a sham, man. The whole thing is a sham. So let's give Jake Tapper some credit. That's not something you'll hear me do very often. Okay. The Pete Hegseth held a news conference earlier this morning. I saw this at 7:00. I have Fox News Channel on in the studio. And it's something for me when, for instance, we're in a commercial break or, I can keep my eye on the television, just see if there's any breaking news, anything going on. So Pete Hegseth this morning did another update on what's going on in Iran. And the Pentagon now is asking Congress to boost the funding for the war in Iran. He announced that this morning. He said, and he's asking for $200 billion in additional funding. But the number could be flexible. He said, as far as $200 billion, I think that number could move. Obviously, it takes money to kill bad guys. So we're going back to Congress and our folks there to ensure that we're properly funded for what's been done, for what we may have to do in the future, ensure that our ammunition and everything's refilled, and not just refilled, but above and beyond, he said. So one senior House Republican said the request is actually north of $200 billion. Also, Hegseth saying today that the U.S. has carried out 7,000 strikes in Iran since the beginning of Operation Epic Fury. Wow, 7,000. And he said that today we will see the largest strike package of the war so far, as the Iranian then capabilities continue to degrade and the U.S. ramping up its attacks. He said the U.S. has sunk over 120 Iranian naval vessels. He said their surface fleet is no longer a factor. 11 of their submarines have been eliminated. Yeah, I think that's all that I'm finding, at least this morning at foxnews.com. Looking at some of their breaking stories. So at least I wanted to touch on that a little bit. And then I've got to share this before we wrap up this morning. Piers Morgan. I don't know what it is about Piers Morgan. I like the guy. I mean, I like the guy. I didn't know who Piers Morgan was. Wasn't he a judge? It was Everybody's Got Talent, right? And he was one of the judges, and he's perfect for a judge because he's snotty, and you watch those shows you watch for entertainment, at least as a viewer. But I've always liked Piers Morgan. And I would say like 9 times out of 10, I agree with Piers Morgan. He's every now and again, he comes up with something. I go, I don't know that I can agree with that. It's a little off the wall, but I like Piers Morgan. So you fault me if you want. I do like Piers Morgan. So Piers Morgan, this is a story from the New York Post, storms off his own show. He had a guy on his show who is a manosphere influencer. And this is crazy. This is one of the things that, a manosphere influencer. And so Piers Morgan gets the guy on, and I'll tell you how bad that went in a moment. But I'm like, why do you want to elevate these people? I'm very, very careful when I'm on the air. As to somebody wants to be on the show, it depends. It depends on, you're shining a spotlight on that person for a short period of time. Who do you want to? I mean, I've told you on the air many times, I don't want to waste your time. I really don't. Sometimes I think I do, but I really don't wish to. So he has this manosphere influencer on his program, and this is a guy known as Harrison Sullivan. He's better known as HS Tiki Taki. He's a social media influencer, and so Piers Morgan has him on the program, and he's insulting Morgan. And Morgan says, "I couldn't care less about your silly little insults. It's like a 2-year-old. Why would I care?" Morgan said. And he's, he said he has earlier bashed him as sexist, misogynist, homophobic twerp. And, so then Sullivan responds, a 2-year-old, listen, sir, I don't know why you come on and talk like you're holier than thou as soon as you're away. Who's this? And so then he flips up his phone to face the camera with an Instagram photo showing Morgan's wife lounging by the pool in a bathing suit with a sign nearby that says, wanted pool boy, no experience needed. And so then Sullivan says, applications are open. That's your ting, bro. That's your girl. And Piers Morgan gets up and leaves. Leaves his own show. Okay. Is that for real? I mean, I can't imagine, short of a stroke, which I've had on the air before, as you know. Short of some kind of medical emergency, I can't imagine ever getting up and walking off my show. What is that? What? So anyway, he gets up, he walks off, he's upset, and then he says, this guy, you're making yourself look like an even bigger idiot than you did on the Netflix show. I don't know who winds up looking like the bigger idiot when you invite that guy on your show and he does his thing that he's going to do. These people are predictable. There aren't any surprises. So you had that person on for what reason? What value is there in that? And then it's so bad. Piers Morgan has to get up and walk off his own show. I can't imagine ever doing that. I just think that's a lack of professionalism. Man, you just don't get up and walk off your own show. I'm going to leave it there for today. You have made it to the end of today's video, which means you are part of my gallery of champions. I want to throw a salute to the Bunker Brigade. Those are the folks on YouTube that are commenting. I appreciate all of you. If you're not a subscriber on YouTube, please become one. And until tomorrow, my friend, I'm underground and gone.